Welcome to the first Fresh Outlook of 2015. I'm Frank CIPOLLA. We start the year with news of that terrible terror attack in Paris. All of us at Hebdo are saddened by the death of the cartoonists and writers for the French magazine Charlie Hebdo, which is seen by most as an attack, more than anything, on the freedom of expression. Meanwhile, police in France are still piecing together all that has happened there this week.
A frantic scene outside the Paris offices of a French satirical newspaper. Police say black-hooded gunmen shot 12 people dead at the offices of Charlie Hebdo, 10 of them journalists and 2 others police officers. Another 10 people were also injured in the attack, which one police official described as carnage. A witness described 2 gunmen as entering the offices with rifles and opening fire. He says the men were seen fleeing the building. French President François Hollande headed to the scene of the attack.
We must show our determination to fight against anything that might divide us and be implacable in our fight against racism and anti-Semitism. Those who have committed those acts, those fanatics, have nothing in common with the rest of the Muslim faith.
And British Prime Minister David Cameron condemned the assault.
While details are still unclear, I know that this House and this country stands united with the French people in our opposition to all forms of terrorism, and we stand squarely for free speech and democracy. And these people will never be able to take us off those values.
Charlie Hebdo has always courted controversy. Its latest tweet on its Twitter account mocks the leader of the Islamic State. The French government says it's raised the security level to the highest notch, although the country has already been on high alert.
Joining us now to discuss the events in Paris this week are Iman Shamsi Ali, professor of media studies at Western Connecticut State University, is Jackie Guzda. And we also have former police detective and law enforcement expert Joseph Blaitler. And via Skype from his home in Florida, the nation's preeminent political psychologist, Dr. Bart Rossi, joins us as well. Let me throw this out there to all of you and see where it goes. Is this a surprise to anyone that these attacks continue to happen worldwide?
Absolutely not. I mean, there is a faction now that wants to eradicate Western civilization. So the fact that it's happening in Paris is no surprise. It's happened in the United States. It recently happened in Canada. Happened in
Australia as well.
Happened in Australia recently, and it's going to continue.
Now, as a law enforcement expert, is there anything you could do really to prevent things like this? It seems to me there are not. We have to live our lives, obviously.
No, it's extremely difficult to stop the lone wolf. And now they're using a new phrase, wolf packs, small wolf packs. And what's troubling here is that we've always viewed terrorism as a federal issue, that the federal government was going to handle the problem. But now we're seeing it's becoming a local law enforcement issue.
Well, do they have the resources to deal with the problem like that?
No, they don't. You look at the incident in France, I mean, most of those guys were armed with handguns. The terrorists came in with AK-47s. Local police are not equipped to deal with terrorism on U.S. soil. So it becomes a very serious issue. We've seen numerous incidents throughout the United States. There was a beheading in Oklahoma.
True.
We saw one right here in New Jersey, West Orange, a young kid stopped at a traffic light. He was assassinated by a jihadist who was responsible for 5 other homicides throughout the United States. So these are very difficult attacks to stop.
Iman?
I'm truly astonished and angry because just a few days ago, these kind of people killed Muslims in Peshawar, Pakistan, students. And I think it's really pained me as a Muslim first because they claimed my faith. That I studied this religion since my childhood. I'm a memorizer of the Holy Quran. I don't find any single justification in the religion to such barbaric act of these terrorists.
Well, we've seen some people, especially after this event, in the Muslim world and the Middle East in general, denouncing this, which we haven't seen before. Have we reached the tipping point where enough is enough as far as everyone is concerned?
I hope the Muslims will be aware enough that this is it's not against anybody. It's against first Muslims because the majority of those being victimized by these terrorist attacks are Muslims themselves. And more importantly, our religion have been victimized in the first place because they claim to be Muslim. They claim even sometimes to be better Muslim than the average Muslims. And so it is very painful to us. And that's why I'm so happy to see that the huge majority of the Muslims have condemned it. All national Muslim organizations in the United States have condemned it. Many local mosques have condemned it. I myself have issued statements very clearly. I have a piece yesterday on Daily News about this very clearly, urging the Muslim to speak up against this, because this is simply not only against Islam, it's destroying the image of Islam, particularly in the West.
I want to circle back to that in just a moment. I want to bring in political psychologist Dr. Bart Rossi, who is with us via Skype. Dr. Rossi, take us into the mind of the terrorist. Why are these things happening? Why do they think that they have the right to do this?
Well, Frank, psychologists talk about self-actualization, and picking up from what Jackie said, these particular terrorists feel emboldened, powerful, and they feel that God is going to treat them as a martyr. God is going to praise them in the afterlife. So when you have this type of perverted thinking, this bizarre and perverted thinking, and this psychology, not only with the terrorists, but with these groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIL, this is what we're really up against. And we can talk about the military and the police, that's important. And we can also talk about the political solutions. But first and foremost, I think we need to understand that these people want to destroy everybody else, and their religion is the religion that should conquer the world. And that's what we're dealing with from a psychological standpoint.
Iman, why haven't more people in the Muslim community come forward? And not only, I mean, during this particular episode, but we've had events ongoing. Why is there hesitancy there?
I don't think that there is a hesitation. It is just because Muslims living in a very comfort zone. They feel that they're the majority. They have a. When you live in a comfort zone, you're never being outside of your comfort zone. You don't feel that such responsibility. Now, I'm a Muslim here in the state. I'm an American Muslim, and I feel that it is my responsibility to speak out against these vices in our community. These terrorists, they are terrorists, and more painful that they claim to be even better Muslim than average of Muslims like myself. And so, yes.
No, what I was going to say is we've seen it. You bring up a very good point, and the freedom of speech issue is really big here, because, you know, we saw what happened when the movie The Interview came out, and the United States and Sony immediately said, we're not going to show the movie. But here we have people a few days from the terrorist attack in France, and they're going to publish the magazine again next week in defiance of this terror. Now, it's a freedom of speech issue, obviously, but are there any correlations, Jackie, between these two events? The movie The Interview, which was pulled by Sony, and also the people in France saying, hey, we're going to go full speed ahead.
Well, this is a bigger freedom of speech issue than The Interview. The Interview just used assassinating Kim Jong-un as a plot device. Right. And it didn't show us, you know, what deeply was going on. You take satire, like Charlie Hebdo does, those cartoons. You take satire, like we do in the United States, like Jon Stewart does.
Right.
And what they're doing is actually pointing fun at these world leaders and these issues that we don't see on the surface. That gives us knowledge. That gives us an education in these kind of people and these kind of issues. And we need that. We need that to make good decisions.
Joe, how do you size up this attack? It seemed very organized and coordinated. They knew when they were having their editorial meeting. They showed up. You know, it wasn't a random act, obviously. It was planned.
No, it was planned. They actually knew who they were looking for. They actually asked people to identify certain people for them. You know, believe it or not, these acts of terrorism are easy to carry out. You don't really have to have that much training. You don't have to have that much sophistication. I don't believe these guys were that particularly sophisticated. But you have an AK-47 with a couple guys, you can do a lot of damage. And you know, it's not so much the sophistication of it; it's just the ease of doing it. Really, there's not a whole lot preventing people from doing these types of things.
Should people who have magazines or radio or TV shows that poke fun at authority, and in some cases religion, and they're all around, should they take pause now that they could be victims as well? They could be targets as well?
I think human nature is to take pause, because I don't want to be a victim. But I think when we look in a global sense, no, they should continue to express themselves the way they always have. And you know, obviously, it's easy for me to say that because I'm not in that position. If I'm personally under threat, I might think twice. Hopefully, though, for the betterment of society, they continue to express themselves. They continue to express their freedom of the press, freedom of speech. Because if we stop, then the terrorists win. And we can't have that.
Iman, why is it they've taken religion especially, and distorted, and a lot of religions do this, not just the Islamic community. A lot of religions distort what their beliefs are and make this right for some reason.
I think this is a matter of education. I see in the Muslim world there's a lot of things that need to be tackled, particularly the educational system, that in many ways religion had been dominated by emotion rather than rationality. You know, as the Muslims grew up in Indonesia, I'm from Indonesia, I know what does it mean to study Islam in the traditional Islamic schools. But when I came to the United States, it opened my horizon. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's about how Muslims and peoples of religion should get out from the comfort zones. When you become neighbors to Christians, to Jews, to Hindus, to Buddhists, then you open your horizon that, you know, we can live together. I have my own tradition, I have my own faith, I have my own, you know, how you call identity, possibly you may say. But these are people as well. They are my brothers in humanity. These people are being hijacked by their own comfort zones.
Well, you make a good point here. People like to stay in their comfort zone and hear what reinforces their thoughts already. Dr. Rossi, this is your area of expertise, the human mind. Why do people enjoy or feel as though they have to remain in their comfort zone to live a happy, healthy life and not really entertain anything else?
Well, there's extremism in all religions, and some people embrace this extreme fundamentalism because it empowers them. They feel emboldened, and they feel that it makes them right. And as I said before, they get a sense of self-actualizing themselves, and they become the person that they would like to be in a perverted sense. And that's what's really happening here. And that's why I think nations around the world have to really take a look at the psychology of all of this. You can't plan enough military interventions or political machinations here to solve the problem. All the nations of the world need to get together and deal with this perversion.
All right, I have a follow-up. Jackie, you have a question.
The psychology and the sociology. This is a problem that goes back, what, 20, 30 years when immigration first started to happen in the country of France. I mean, little by little, you know what the French culture is like.
Yes.
There's geraniums on the flower pots and everything's clean and pretty. And I remember about 25 years ago on the outskirts of Paris, somebody saying to me, look, there's graffiti on the walls. We never saw that before in Paris. It's those Arabs. And so the Arabs look different. They dress different. You know, there was the big thing about the headscarf recently. These are foreigners to the French nationals.
Oh, but you know, Dr. Rossi, back to you for a moment. Is it an education issue? Why is it people fear not learning the unknown? Is it that they're not educated or they're not open?
Well, actually, Frank, many educated people are extreme. It's not just a matter of education, it's a matter of ideology.
But how do you square that?
People can be very smart.
It doesn't seem to me.
And they can be intelligent, but they still want to hold on to certain ideas, and this is why I think we need to deal with the psychology of this all.
But doesn't the human mind say to you that you want to be part of a group, a larger group, as opposed to a very small group, radicals like this?
But the radicals enhance these people. Al-Qaeda and ISIL make these people feel powerful in a perverted way, and they buy into it. I mean, we see extremism in this country. Fortunately, we're not killing people, but you have people on the far right, on the far left that have very bizarre ideas, and they embrace those ideas, and they will not change. They do not want to change, in spite of the facts.
All right, Joseph, how do you, we'll get to you in just a moment, Iman. Joseph, how do you prevent this? If you were consulting a police department, a local police department, you're originally from the Union City Police Department here in New Jersey, what would you tell them to try to prevent these? Is there anything that you could tell them that at least make it less likely to happen?
These attacks are really difficult to prevent. And the only way to prevent them is through educating the public that if they see something not right, people speaking out against the government, that they have to report it. But for the police to actually stop these attacks, it's extremely difficult. It's going to take a unified effort across the board. The public, the police, everybody.
Are we ready for that?
No.
Jackie.
Look, we've got to go back and nip this in the bud. All week we've been hearing this phrase, disenfranchise youth, disenfranchise Muslim youth. We've got to go back and fix things in our society. We should not treat people as if they don't measure up. This was the same kind of mindset that created the Boston bombing during the marathon. You have people, you have young people who feel that they just don't fit into the society. And so, like Dr. Bart said, they look for something higher than themselves, make themselves more than what they are down in their little place in France or in Boston. And so we've really got to take a step back and look at this as a sociological issue.
Iman will give you the last word. We just have about 30 seconds.
I just wanted to say that in addition to psychological and social factors that mentioned earlier, it is also very important to understand that there are also religious misinterpretations, if I may say, that in many ways I think Muslims need really to tackle their interpretation of the religion, particularly such religious texts that concerning human relations. It is very important because otherwise that really hijacks some of our youngs into hatred and animosity. That's very, very crucial.
I want to thank everybody on the panel. I thought that was a very good discussion on this issue, and we appreciate your time today. When we come back, we'll look at the recovery efforts ongoing for the remains of Air Asia Flight 8501 and discuss the current state of commercial aviation. We'll be right back.